Hi, I'm jack.shilley and welcome to this week's episode. In terms of what's happening in the vegetables and fruit patches at the moment, there's not an awful lot to do. We're in a sort of a period where there's not a lot to plant out. We've planted out our first winter crops and they're coming along nicely, but it's not quite ready enough for the harvest yet. So there's a bit of a lull period on that. So in today's episode, I'm going to be showing you how I pot on my palm trees. Now, I'm a bit of a palm fanatic and there's nothing better for me than being able to sit in the garden when the weather's like today and be surrounded by tropical and exotic plants. Now, a lot of you might think that palms aren't really suited to our country, but actually there's a decent amount of palms that really give a nice tropical effect in your own garden that are completely hardy. And today I'm going to be potting on a Trachycarpus fortunei, which is this one here. Now they're the Chuzan palm and they're completely frost hardy down to about -10, which we don't get very often. I'm going to be planting it in a container, and as I said, I'm going to be showing you the process of how I go about doing that. So when you're looking to pot on your palm tree, which I've got in this pot here, you need to be looking for a pot that's ideally sort of double the size of the container it's in at the moment. Now this is the perfect size for this. It's a little bit more than double the size, but that's fine. They're going to be staying in these for a little while. And what I've done is I've drilled lots of drainage holes at the bottom of the pot here because they need to be in fertile, moist, nutrient-rich soil, but it has to be well draining. If their roots are sat in water, or it gets cold in the winter and the water inside the pot cannot drain through and it freezes, then you're going to kill your palm tree. So it needs to be really well draining. And then also what I'm going to do is, as usual, is crush up some pots and place them at the bottom of the container. You want just sort of one layer of them, otherwise there's not going to be enough room to actually plant the plant in the soil. So I've done that. Now that just helps the drainage and stops the soil from falling straight through the holes at the bottom. And then you have to mix the compost. Now the palm trees, as I said, they need the nutrients, they need it nice and fertile, but they also want it well draining. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using normal multi-purpose compost, and then I'm going to mix in large amounts of John Innes No. 3 to make it really light and allow that water to drain straight through whilst keeping the nutrients of the compost there. I would say 50-50 is about right. I'm going to do less compost and more John Innes No. 3 because they do need that well draining soil. It's just ordinary bog standard multi-purpose from your garden centre that I'm going to put in first. So that's my ordinary multi-purpose compost. And now John Innes No. 3, which is a very loose compost, quite sandy, gritty, good for really well draining stuff. You need to add generous amounts of to ensure that this compost is going to be well draining of John Innes. You can then mix it up so you can see how dark the compost is compared to the John Innes, which you're now mixing in with it. And then once you start to mix it, you'll start to see that very dark compost gets completely mixed up with the John Innes, and it creates a really nutrient rich with the compost mixture. But it creates a really nutrient rich mixture and is really well draining, which is ideal for what these palms want. So the Trachycarpus, which I've got here, is quite pot bound. It's been in here for a while, and the easiest way to do it is to lift this up and hit the pot off like that, and you've got a nice solid root ball there which you can just slot into the new planter. You want to make sure, because it always looks, palm trees look fantastic in containers, but what you've got to make sure is that the trunk is dead central, otherwise it's going to look very odd. So now the final process in planting this Trachycarpus palm is I'm going to top it with these nice decorative stones. Now it just hides the compost, helps keep moisture in so they're not going to dry out too easy, and just generally makes the plant look nicer than it does at the moment with just the soil on the top. Now what I've done with these, because they come in a bag and they're not washed, I've given them washing over to remove any debris or chemicals, whatever that might be left on the surface, so they're safe to put on the plant. And then all you need to do is put them on the surface of the soil. You want a decent layer. So this is about probably a couple of centimetres deep here. Right the way around the palm. So that all the compost is covered right up to the trunk of the plant. So there we have it. This is the finished palm, potted on and top dressed with this lovely white stone chippings as well. There are a few fronds on here which are looking a bit tired and tatty, which are these lower ones here, these three. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those off completely, right back to the stem here, and then it just tidies up, and that is how the palm grows. So new layers come out, the next one down sort of gets tired and depleted, and then they cut off, and that's what creates the trunk that grows up into the palm that it's eventually going to be. The only other thing to do once you've planted your palm, especially if the compost you were using is dry or the weather's going to be warm for the next few days, which it is here, is to give them a really good water. Now I'm going to water them in using just a single watering can, because I also have some special palm fertiliser here which I've got. Now I bought this from a special palm nursery, and it's the same NPK like all fertilisers, but it's got very high nitrogen content and it's got very high potassium content as well. Now what this is going to do is it's going to ensure that the palm has good nitrogen levels to produce these healthy lush green leaves, and it's going to be really strong and ready and get settled very quickly in the container it's in. Well, that's all we've got time for in this week's episode. I've shown you how to plant one of my favourite types of plants, having containers on the patio, at the back of the garden, they can go underground. I mean, I just love palms. They are one of my favourite plants to grow. And I've shown you my process of potting them on. It's a really simple process. Like most containers, make sure there's really good drainage, and especially with palms, make sure that it's nutrient rich. So use multi-purpose compost, feed it, but also mix in that Johnson's number 3, which is going to help break it up, loosen through, and allow the water to drain through quickly and rapidly. Trachycarpus fortunei, the Chusan palm which I planted here, gets quite big, and the bigger, more mature it gets, the more hardier it gets. It is one of the hardiest British palms. One this size is probably going to be hardy down to -10, as I said earlier, so really no need to wrap it or cover it in the winter unless we're going to have a particularly cold spell. If we're going to have snow, then it's always an idea to brush the snow off the fronds so that it's not going to burn the fronds, and it might be, if we're going to have snow for a long period of time, just protect the crown up here if it's going to be particularly cold. Otherwise they're low maintenance, make sure they don't dry out, feed them sort of once a month with a high nitrogen feed to ensure the fronds coming through are still strong and a lush green, and they make perfect patio plants that add a little bit of tropical flair to your garden. As always, if you have any comments, questions or queries you'd like to share with anyone else on the channel, please do post them in the comment box below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.